I like to remind readers that since the year 2000, more than 350 books have been published explaining in detail the falsification of theism, Christianity especially. This has never happened before, ever. Please tell your Christian friends they have a lot of homework to do. They haven't noticed. My name is David Madison, the 1st of February 2020. I'm an ex-clergy atheist, and I have gathered these titles into what I call the Cure for Christianity Library, in homage to Mark Twain's famous comment that the best cure for Christianity is reading the Bible. Now, there are a lot more books to help with that. Just type into Google Cure for Christianity Library. These writers have said some pretty cool things, hence this series of flash podcasts, Cure for Christianity Knockout Quotes. This is quote number 13. One of Guy Harrison's books is 50 Reasons People Get for Believing in a God. This is a superb, highly readable account of why belief in gods doesn't work. In this book, Harrison makes this observation, quote, "It is nothing less than shocking, some might say scandalous, that so many believers know so little about their own religion. Christians may or may not be the worst, but they certainly are in the running." Unquote. Just how ignorant are Christians about their own religion? Martin Luther believed that Paul's letter to the Romans was the most important book in the New Testament. He recommended memorizing it. It is one of the charter documents of the Christian faith. I once mentioned the book of Romans to a devout churchgoer, and she said, "I don't know it." We should go into a big church sometime and ask for a show of hands. How many here have read the book of Romans, all of it, during the last week? Probably 0 hands would go up. Well, how many have read the whole book of Romans sometime during the last year? Maybe a few hands would go up. There's really bad theology in the book of Romans, and one of Paul's biggest gaffes is in the 13th chapter. Americans who love democracy might want to tear out chapter 13. The book of Romans is one of the most written about documents in Western history, yet most Christians couldn't tell you why. Let's move on to the Gospels. When were they written, and in what order? How do we account for so many contradictions? Why is the Gospel of Mark so different than the Gospel of John? Matthew and Luke copied Mark, great stretches of it, to make improvements. They plagiarized without telling anybody. Even devout scholars know the Gospels don't provide trustworthy accounts of the life of Jesus. The Gospels were written decades later. Writing accurate history requires contemporary documentation about events such as letters, diaries, transcripts, newspaper accounts, written right after things happen. There is none of that, none at all, for Jesus. Do most Christians know that? Of course, priests and preachers have no desire to point out these problems with the Gospels. We're going to read the Gospel passages from the pulpit. Don't ask any questions. They don't care that Christians know so little about the problems of the Gospels. When Christians hear that some scholars suggest that Jesus never existed, they're irate, they're indignant. How dare they say such a thing? But they can't name 2 or 3 of the reasons why there is doubt about Jesus, based, here's the irony, on evidence in the New Testament itself. I sometimes call Christianity the ancient Jesus mystery cult, but the folks in the pews don't have a clue that their religion derives so much from the beliefs and practices of other ancient mystery cults. Guy Harrison has called it correctly. Christians are so ignorant of their own religion, which is why the church gets away with so much misinformation about Jesus.